No way a guy like you owns this ride for real. Officer Kevin Malloy slams his baton into the Mercedes G-Wagon's windshield, the spiderweb crack ringing through the upscale Arlington cul-de-sac. Out of the car, now! Marcus Ellison, sharply dressed, stays eerily composed despite the cop's unhinged aggression. Officer, what's your legal basis for stopping me? Marcus asks, voice controlled. Legal basis? Malloy yanks the door handle like he wants it off the hinge. A street punk in a $150,000 truck is my probable cause. This heap's stolen. Marcus answers, I'm not a thug. You're a criminal. Malloy snarls, drawing his gun. Inside the coffee shop, customers gasp, phones rising like a wall of black glass. Malloy levels his weapon at Marcus's chest. Hands up! Either this SUV is stolen or you bought it with drug money. Marcus lifts his hands with practiced, almost military precision. Sir, I have every document proving lawful ownership, he replies steadily. Malloy spits on the hood, saliva sliding down the flawless paint. Fake paperwork. You people always print fake stuff. He barks into his radio. Unit 37. I need immediate backup, possible armed suspect with a stolen luxury vehicle. What Malloy doesn't realize is he's just torched the most important moment of his career. The G-Wagon glints in the afternoon sun, polished black panels mirroring shocked faces and trembling phones. This isn't just any high-end SUV. It's a six-figure symbol that, in Malloy's warped worldview, someone like Marcus Ellison has no right to possess. To him, the sight itself is an insult that demands correction. Marcus sits behind the wheel with the calm presence of a man who's survived far worse than an angry patrol officer. At 46, every angle of his posture screams prior military training. Malloy, blinded by bias, sees only one thing: a black man in an expensive car who therefore must be dirty. What Malloy doesn't see are the quiet details that scream another story. A Pentagon parking tag peeks from beneath the dash mat. The phone buzzes with missed calls from contacts labeled Jen Whittaker and Congressional Liaison Office. A thick folder stamped confidential rests on the passenger seat, still open from earlier review. Marcus had been skimming those materials after leaving a sensitive briefing barely 30 minutes earlier. Officer Kevin Malloy, 8 years on the job and 39, represents the worst version of assumption-based policing. Saddled with back child support, driving a beat-up Honda with 200,000 miles, he patrols wealth he'll never touch. Every shift in this affluent slice of Arlington, he watches residents breeze by in luxury cars, resentment piling like snow on an unplowed street. The coffee shop sits a short walk from the Pentagon, a regular watering hole for military brass and federal civilians grabbing caffeine between classified meetings and policy briefings. Any random weekday, colonels, generals, and defense contractors drift through this very spot. But Malloy only registers what fits his script. In the growing crowd, several key witnesses unknowingly move into position. Eleanor Price, a retired teacher walking her golden retriever, slows down, her expression tightening as she senses something off. Through the front windows, Jamal, the young black barista, stares with growing dread. He's served Marcus dozens of times over recent months. Always courteous, always precise, always flashing military ID for his veteran discount. At a corner table, Major Sophia Alvarez sits in plain clothes, immediately recognizing her Pentagon colleague, yet staying seated. She understands instinctively that her role as witness may matter more than confrontation. Her phone is already recording from the tabletop. Outside, Malloy runs the plate through his system, confidence unshaken even when it pings clean. Registered to M. Ellison at a high-end Arlington address. To him, that just screams identity theft. Another piece, he thinks, in some elaborate criminal scheme. The search of the SUV turns up things that should give any reasonable officer pause. Military medals tucked in the glove box, including ribbons many cops would recognize as serious. But prejudice works like a dirty lens, turning genuine achievements into stolen valor props ordered online. Real soldiers don't roll around in cars like this, Malloy crows to the bystanders, holding up a silver star like evidence. They buy this junk on Amazon to fool people. Marcus watches years of service, earned in blood and sand, reduced to stage decorations by a man whose biggest risk has been bad weather. Those medals mark nights when Marcus pulled American soldiers out of ambushes in Afghanistan, maybe even saving family members of the people now watching him be degraded. His training keeps him steady, but the irony burns hot. Nearby, Officer Lisa Nguyen pulls up, 6 months into the job and already uneasy. Her father served nearly 30 years in the Army and taught her to spot the stance, vocabulary, and disciplined calm that mark a true service member. Unlike Malloy, she starts carefully filming everything, instinct screaming that this traffic stop is rolling straight toward catastrophe and she might be the only honest witness. The crowd thickens as texts fly through the neighborhood. Camera phones multiply, stitching together a digital record destined to hit millions of screens. Early social media posts pop up with hashtags Justice for Marcus and Zaschreich Honorary Rose, though nobody here yet understands just how accurate those tags will look once the full story surfaces. Malloy's radio crackles with dispatch, growing impatient. They question why he's requesting more units. A supervisor asks for justification for the drawn-out stop. Drunk on his own authority and convinced he's sniffed out a mastermind, Malloy leans harder into his fantasy instead of pulling back. "We've got a big one," he boasts. High-end stolen vehicle, fake military stuff, likely part of a larger identity theft ring. What he can't fathom is that every sentence is being captured from multiple angles, every insult preserved. The man he's parading as a criminal didn't steal this ride. He bought it with 20-plus years of combat and hardship. Combat pay from war zones paid for metal and leather, earned while he defended the freedoms Malloy claims to uphold. The stage is set. A decorated war veteran about to be crushed by lazy, lethal assumptions in front of dozens of witnesses, all while evidence quietly accumulates that will blow the narrative apart. But for the moment, things are going to get much uglier. Malloy's confidence swells into something dangerous as more squad cars roll up. Red and blue strobes wash the manicured neighborhood in crime scene colors. What began as a traffic stop is now a spectacle. 4 officers circling the G-Wagon, 30 spectators filming. "Step away from the stolen vehicle," Malloy bellows, playing to the crowd. "Hands behind your back. You're under arrest for grand theft auto." Marcus obeys with disciplined precision, every movement deliberate. 2 decades of high-stress training snap into place. Hands visible, no sudden moves, verbal compliance. His professionalism only enrages Malloy further. The officer reads calm as arrogance, military bearing as smug superiority. "Look at this guy!" Malloy jeers to the other officers, loud enough for everyone. Cool as ice, like he's better than the rest of us who actually work for a living. The vehicle search morphs into open destruction, paperwork flying everywhere. Malloy rips through the glove box like he's tearing into a piñata. Insurance cards, registration, loan paperwork, service records. He dismisses them as advanced forgeries without glancing twice. Then he finds it. The Medal of Honor resting in its presentation case. His eyes light up like he's just uncovered the missing puzzle piece. He hoists it like a trophy, turning toward the onlookers and the news camera that's just rolled up. "Prime shipping, folks," he sneers. "Instant war hero. Click, pay, pretend." The authentic medal, awarded when Marcus pulled 30 soldiers out of a Taliban kill zone, becomes a prop in Malloy's ugly street performance. Several veterans in the crowd shift uncomfortably, recognizing the decoration's distinct profile and knowing exactly what it represents, even if Malloy refuses to. Eleanor Price, still clutching her dog's leash, walks over to Officer Nguyen, concern etched in every line of her face. Years of dealing with troubled kids push her forward. "Officer, excuse me," she says softly, "but I've seen this gentleman around here for months. He's always respectful and professional." Malloy whirls on her like she's insulted him. "Ma'am, back up. Now. Criminals are experts at acting normal. That's the whole game. They study decent folks, copy them, slide into good neighborhoods." His contempt for community input shows how locked in his prejudice is. No number of character witnesses can puncture the story he's already written about Marcus based on skin color and car alone. The classified folder becomes Malloy's next victim. He dumps the contents onto the hood, pages scattering like tossed confetti. Marcus watches in horror as documents branded top secret and congressional eyes only catch the breeze, drifting toward the gutter. Pieces of ongoing national security operations flutter around their shoes. Fake government paperwork, Malloy announces confidently, snatching up a briefing labeled for tomorrow's Senate Intelligence Committee hearing. Probably downloaded some template from online. These people think if it looks official enough, we'll swallow the lie. The irony could choke you. Malloy is literally scattering genuine classified material while declaring it counterfeit, possibly committing federal felonies while accusing an innocent man of the same. At last, Jamal can't stay inside the coffee shop any longer. Hands trembling, he walks outside, fully aware he's stepping into something dangerous, but unable to ignore his conscience. "Officer, I need to say something," he begins. "I've served that customer for months. He always shows military ID for the vet discount. Never any trouble. Always polite. Tips well. Really respectful." Malloy spins toward Jamal, aggression spiking. "So you're vouching for a car thief now. Maybe you're tied into this whole ring. You want me checking your record for warrants?" The implied threat hangs heavy. Jamal instinctively backs away, painfully aware how risky it is challenging Malloy's script while black in this moment. Officer Nguyen pulls Malloy aside, voice low, urgent. "Kev, something is really wrong here. His stance, his tone, the way he tracks everything. My dad did 29 years in the Army. This is how real soldiers act." Malloy snorts. "Your dad probably got played by stolen valor fakes too. These guys are advanced. They copy mannerisms, learn the jargon, pull off the con." Nguyen's documentation grows more meticulous, her instincts blaring that she's watching a colossal mistake unfold. She photographs the metals scattered on asphalt, the wind-tossed documents, the ring of phones filming. Every click quietly builds the record that will later flatten Malloy. In Marcus's wallet, Malloy finds a Pentagon access badge, a high-level credential that usually takes months of background checks and security clearance. Instead of verifying it through proper channels, he waves it at the TV camera like a prize. "Look right here! Fake Pentagon ID. Federal crime territory. This dude's cooked. We're talking identity theft, stolen valor, classified materials, fraud. 20 to life easy." Reporter Emily Park, originally sent to cover a routine Pentagon briefing, senses instantly she's stumbled onto a career-making story. Her camera operator records every swaggering sentence as Malloy methodically humiliates a man who, on video, never once resists. The crowd's mood swerves from curious to horrified. Many keep filming, building an airtight digital archive that will detonate online. Others try to speak up, only to get barked at or pushed back by Malloy. "Folks," he crows like a carnival host, "this is what real street policing looks like. Front row seats." Marcus's confiscated phone won't stop buzzing on the hood. Caller ID flashes. Pentagon Security, Jenner Whitaker, Congressional Liaison Office, Hill staff. Every missed connection signals a growing crisis. Malloy can't even imagine. He glances at the screen and laughs. "Look at this guy. Fake Pentagon numbers saved for effect. Real elaborate. If his phone rings enough with important-sounding callers, we're supposed to buy his story." Inside, Major Sofia Alvarez decides she's seen enough. She walks over to Nguyen quietly, identifies herself as active duty Army, and explains exactly who Marcus is and what she's witnessed. Her statement will later slice through department excuses. Back outside, the cuffs snap shut around Marcus's wrists with a sharp metallic click that seems to hush the block. Malloy rattles off an expanding list of charges: grand theft auto, stolen valor, possession of classified documents, identity theft, obstruction, even resisting arrest, though every video angle shows Marcus completely compliant the whole time. "Got ourselves a real mastermind," Malloy tells the cluster of officers and onlookers, puffed with pride. "This truck probably costs more than all our paychecks put together, and genius here thought he could just cruise through Arlington like he actually owns it." They load Marcus into the cruiser like contraband. Malloy can't resist one more speech for the cameras. "This is what American policing is," he declares. "We don't let crooks hide behind fake uniforms and forged IDs. Justice gets served." The G-Wagon sits abandoned, contents strewn like wreckage. Its rightful owner rides to jail for daring to drive while black. Back at dispatch, Malloy's radio traffic has been going out to operators juggling increasingly urgent calls from Pentagon security about a missing Colonel Marcus Ellison. Malloy has no idea his supposed career-making arrest is on a countdown to becoming the disaster that ends everything he's built in uniform. The crowd slowly breaks apart, some still filming as they walk, others already dialing friends and family to describe the injustice they just watched. Online, the story is already mutating into trending outrage. Hashtags stacking up. But the true blast, the collision between documented reality and Malloy's prejudice, is still ahead. The Arlington Police Department's booking area hums with the usual Tuesday buzz until Malloy strides in, practically glowing. He marches Marcus through like a hunter displaying a trophy buck. "Major federal case here," he brags to anyone within earshot. "Grand theft, stolen valor, bogus Pentagon credentials, whole package sitting right here." Desk Sergeant Monica Chavez looks up from her screen as they approach. Something feels off immediately. The suspect's balanced stance, measured breathing, calm eye contact. None of it reads, "street criminal." "Name?" she asks. "Colonel Marcus Ellison, United States Army." Marcus replies clearly. Malloy laughs. "Hear that?" Still clinging to the act, Chavez notes the precise diction, the steady respect. Her husband, a Marine vet, taught her how real military folks carry themselves. This man checks every box. During fingerprinting, Marcus's phone continues buzzing nonstop. Caller IDs scroll by. Jenner Whittaker, Pentagon OPS. Congressional Liaison, Defense Security Service. Malloy just smirks. All part of the costume. He says, sophisticated fake contacts. These identity thieves do their homework. But Chavez recognizes the formatting on those numbers. They're too specific, too official. Her discomfort grows as she studies the medals and ribbons, all looking way too authentic to be discount store costumes or novelty props. Lieutenant Daniel O'Leary, 20 years on the force, steps in to review the arrest. "Malloy, you run his info through the military verification system," he asks. "Sir, it's obviously fake." Malloy answers, confident. "Real soldiers don't drive cars worth more than a house." O'Leary's expression hardens. "That's not what I asked you." At the same time, Pentagon security triggers a welfare check for the missing colonel. The call hits Arlington dispatch at 3:47 p.m. "We're checking on Colonel Marcus Ellison. Has your department had contact?" O'Leary feels his stomach knot. The verification request takes 4 long minutes that will rewrite several careers permanently. Chavez runs the check. Malloy should have started roadside. The screen fills with data like a punch to the chest. Active duty colonel, Medal of Honor recipient, highest clearance tire. "Kevin, you need to see this," she calls. He walks over expecting backup, but his smirk fades as he reads the record. "No way. These databases can be hacked," he mutters weakly. "Kev, this is live Pentagon confirmation," Chavez answers. He is exactly who he says he is. The calls escalate. General Whittaker's office reaches Arlington Command. Congressional staffers ask about tomorrow's hearing witness. The police chief dials O'Leary personally, voice like ice. "Dan, I've got the Pentagon, the Hill, and the mayor calling about a Colonel Marcus Ellison. Are we holding him?" O'Leary closes his eyes briefly. "Yes, Chief. Malloy booked him about 2 hours ago." A long, dangerous silence. "I'm on my way," Chief Angela Ruiz finally says. "Do not release him yet. Do not process anything further and keep Malloy away from him." Meanwhile, the story detonates across the internet. Emily Park's footage spreads faster than the department can keep track. Justice for Marcus and Das Honorary Rose go national. Witnesses like Eleanor, Major Alvarez, and Jamal show up voluntarily with detailed statements and saved videos. Evidence stacks up higher by the hour. Radio logs, body camera footage, civilian clips, Pentagon emails, all contradicting Malloy's report while proving Marcus's identity beyond question. The final confirmation hits when the Pentagon sends over Ellison's official schedule showing a classified briefing 30 minutes before the stop and prep for congressional counterterrorism testimony tomorrow. As the sun dips, Arlington PD faces a crisis that will permanently alter how it handles contact with military personnel. Malloy sits in O'Leary's office, still insisting he did everything right, oblivious that his career effectively flatlined the moment he profiled a decorated colonel over the make of his car. Chief Angela Ruiz's unmarked sedan screeches into the lot at 4:32 p.m., emergency lights strobing. She storms through the front doors, radiating fury. "Where is he?" she demands, voice slicing through the chatter. O'Leary steps forward like a man heading to the gallows. "Cell 3, Chief, but Malloy keeps saying—" "I don't give a damn what Malloy keeps saying," Ruiz snaps. "I just spent 20 minutes on the phone with General Whittaker, the Senate Intelligence Committee Chair, and the Secretary of Defense." The entire station goes quiet, gravity finally landing. Malloy emerges, clinging desperately to his collapsing theory. "Chief, I can explain. This guy's running a sophisticated scam, fake military credentials, stolen luxury ride." Ruiz whirls on him, anger barely leashed. "Shut your mouth, Malloy, right now." She strides toward Holding, heels cracking on tile like warning shots. Behind the bars, Colonel Ellison sits calmly, reading, carrying the quiet dignity of someone who's seen worse. "Colonel Ellison," Ruiz says, instantly respectful, "I'm Chief Angela Ruiz, and I owe you an apology on behalf of this entire department." Marcus looks up levelly. "I'm assuming someone finally ran proper verification." "Yes, sir," she answers. "General Whittaker is extremely concerned about your safety and about tomorrow's testimony implications." The words hit Malloy like physical blows. Congressional testimony, General Whittaker. The gap between who Marcus is and who Malloy decided he was yawns open. "But the car," Malloy whispers, suddenly small. "People like him don't—" Ruiz turns, voice ice cold. "People like him, Malloy. Medal of Honor recipients, combat commanders. The man who pulled 30 soldiers out of an ambush while you were writing traffic citations in the suburbs?" The once scattered folder now sits reassembled, each document authenticated by the Pentagon. The briefings outline counterterrorism efforts so sensitive, Marcus's detention triggered national security protocols. The G-Wagon, paid with combat bonuses from multiple deployments. Every dollar tracked, every payment legit. Ruiz spells it out. You humiliated a colonel en route to prepare for Congress, shredded classified notes, trampled a Medal of Honor recipient's civil rights, and lit off a national incident. And Officer Chavez steps in, holding 20 pages of verification that read like a hero's profile. Medal of Honor, Silver Star, Purple Heart, Bronze Star. 20-plus years, now assigned as a Pentagon congressional liaison. The parking pass, Malloy mocked, issued only after the highest background checks. The military ID he waived for the cameras requires biometric confirmation and year-and-a-half investigations before anyone touches that clearance level. Malloy's face cycles from confusion to denial, to the sick realization that the man he joked about is everything he pretended to admire. Those ignored phone calls. Pentagon security wondering why their colonel missed a classified check-in. Hill's staff frantic about his testimony. General Whittaker's office seeking their trusted officer, not a suspect. Officer Nguyen arrives with printed photos and notes, her documentation airtight. Images show real decorations tossed on asphalt, genuine briefing pages kicked near storm drains, a war hero forced to kneel while a cop played to the crowd. Major Sofia Alvarez steps in wearing full uniform now, silver oak leaves flashing under the lights. "Ma'am, Major Sofia Alvarez, Pentagon Intelligence," she says to Ruiz. "I watched everything. Colonel Ellison stayed professional and compliant the entire time." At the impound lot, paperwork now confirms the G-Wagon's title rests solely under Marcus's name, current insurance, clean history, financing through a military credit union that mostly serves service members. "Do you grasp this, Malloy?" Ruiz asks. "You arrested a sitting colonel prepping for Congress, wrecked classified materials, violated his constitutional rights, and turned our department into a national headline." News alerts roll in. Emily Park's story breaks across major networks. Police arrest war hero en route to high-level testimony. The narrative spreads. Stolen luxury SUV actually bought with combat pay. Social media erupts. Honor heroes and justice for Marcus trend worldwide. Veterans post furious videos. Active duty troops share photos of Marcus receiving his medal. Members of Congress publicly call for investigations and hearings. Malloy sits there, dazed, as his worldview and career implode. The man he painted as a criminal is everything he secretly wished he could be. Genuinely respected, legitimately successful, honored for sacrifice, instead of complaining about opportunity. The Mercedes he resented. 6 months of combat pay from Kandahar tours, where Marcus risked his life while Malloy clocked overtime in climate-controlled squad cars. The irony is brutal. Struggling with bills, Malloy chose to lash out at someone who earned his success the hardest way possible. Ruiz unlocks the holding cell herself. "Colonel Ellison, you're free to go. Your property is being returned immediately. This department will fully investigate what happened to you today." Marcus rises with the same controlled bearing he's kept all day, the bearing of someone who's faced insurgents and politicians alike. "Chief Ruiz, I appreciate your professionalism," he says. "I hope this leads to better training and accountability." Even vindicated, he doesn't gloat. No demands for revenge, no shouted threats. Just quiet confidence that real justice will eventually catch up. The reversal is complete and devastating. The man Malloy mocked for driving a luxury car earned it the hard way, defending Malloy's right to wear the badge he abused. The supposed fraud is the genuine hero. The criminal is America's defender. Internal Affairs. Captain Naomi Brooks walks into Arlington PD at 6:15 a.m. the next morning, briefcase in hand. A 22-year veteran known for methodical investigations, she's never confronted a case this explosive. The conference room becomes a command center within hours, every surface covered in evidence boxes and labeled manila folders, body cam footage, dash cam clips, civilian videos, witness statements, Pentagon emails, and torn classified pages form a wall of proof. We're looking at potential federal civil rights violations, destruction of classified material, and interference with congressional proceedings, Brooks tells her team. This isn't just misconduct. Parts of this may be outright criminal behavior. Digital forensics specialists start reconstructing the entire event, syncing video with radio logs and GPS markers. They stitch together a second-by-second timeline. Malloy's body cam shows his escalation from first approach through arrest. Every slur and skipped protocol captured in crisp audio. Dash cams show crowd reactions while Marcus stays composed. Technicians overlay radio chatter, dispatch notes, and cell tower data to pin down exact moments. The reconstruction proves Malloy made race-based assumptions within 30 seconds of walking up before verifying anything. Nguyen's photos and notebook entries become crucial. Her minute-by-minute record shreds Malloy's report line by line, exposing every falsehood and exaggeration. The synchronized footage paints one undeniable story. A veteran colonel with flawless credentials calmly navigating a stop, while an officer, fueled by resentment and bias, turns routine policing into a public spectacle. What Malloy framed as heroic street work now stands documented as one of the department's most catastrophic failures on record. Her upbringing in a military household lets Officer Lisa Nguyen instantly spot genuine service member bearing, while Malloy sees only race and price tags. Captain Naomi Brooks notes in her early briefing that Nguyen's calm professionalism probably kept this from becoming a full federal takeover. Her notes show textbook policing. Malloy shreds nearly every rule. The witness statements line up like coordinates on a map, all pointing in the same damning direction. Eleanor Price, the retired teacher with 3 decades in classrooms, gives a meticulous account of Malloy's sneering rejection of neighborhood voices and his rising hostility toward anyone daring to question his prepackaged narrative. Jamal, the coffee shop barista, pushes through fear to describe 6 months of respectful, mundane interactions with Colonel Ellison that obliterate Malloy's criminal mastermind script. He backs it with time-stamped receipts, card payment logs, and co-workers ready to verify. Major Sofia Alvarez's sworn testimony carries extra weight thanks to her clearance and Pentagon role. Alvarez lays out layered security protocols like a checklist, background investigations, clearance renewals, access procedures. She explains Marcus's legitimate custody of sensitive documents and confirms his central role in scheduled congressional briefings on counterterrorism. Holding him wasn't just a civil rights violation, she tells investigators. It was a direct hit on national security operations. His detention didn't only trample his rights, Alvarez explains gravely. It disrupted live intelligence work and congressional oversight. Pentagon officials label the incident an institutional emergency requiring rapid resolution. When analysts dig into the luxury SUV, they uncover how deep Malloy's bias ran and how determined he was not to see facts. Financial investigators dissect every inch of the G-Wagon's paper trail, assembling a rock-solid proof of ownership. Combat pay statements, deployment orders, and records from a military credit union form an airtight narrative. Malloy never once attempted to verify any of this through available systems, Brooks notes. His assumptions rest entirely on race and wealth. The banking files show the Mercedes equals roughly 6 months of accumulated combat pay from Marcus's tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. Every dollar traces back to hazardous duty and sleepless nights under fire. The most devastating blow to Malloy's credibility comes from a big-picture pattern analysis of his traffic stops in wealthy neighborhoods. Digital forensic teams mine months of stop data, uncovering a bias trend hiding in plain sight. Over half a year in upscale Arlington, Malloy makes 47 traffic stops. 89% involve drivers of color in high-end cars. Comparing his record to others on the same beat reveals glaring differences in who he targets. He repeatedly pulls over minority drivers in luxury vehicles while overlooking near-identical violations by white motorists in the same blocks. This isn't a one-off incident, Brooks concludes after reviewing the datasets. This is a pattern of profiling aimed specifically at successful people of color in wealthy neighborhoods, enabled by lax supervision. Malloy's disciplinary file tells a similar story of ignored alarms. 12 separate complaints about racial bias dot his 8-year career, most dismissed or ending in wrist slap memos. Training records show skipped bias awareness courses, failed de-escalation refreshers, and underwhelming performance reviews that somehow never triggered real consequences or mandatory intervention. Early warning systems meant to flag problematic behavior never get properly implemented or monitored. The red flags sit in folders, gathering dust, while Malloy keeps patrolling. The signs were there, repeatedly documented and systematically ignored, Brooks writes in her draft findings. Leadership had multiple chances to intervene and chose not to act. Pentagon involvement turns the whole investigation into something much bigger than a local scandal. Defense officials demand a full accounting of how local cops interfered with a colonel carrying classified material and prepping for Hill testimony. Congressional aides voice outrage over harassment of a key national security witness performing official duties. Defense Department liaisons march into Arlington PD shoulder to shoulder with Brooks's team, underscoring how serious this has become. The Pentagon runs its own damage assessment on the mishandled documents, analyzing whether classification levels were compromised. They must determine if Malloy's reckless behavior opened any doors to intelligence leaks or operational risks. Those scattered files could represent a real intel breach, one liaison explains in closed-door sessions. Ellison's briefing book covered sensitive counterterrorism strategies that might affect active field operations if exposed. Meanwhile, media coverage turns relentless. Reporters dig into similar stories, finding luxury car profiling of black and brown drivers in suburbs nationwide. Military advocacy organizations step in, demanding federal protection for service members facing overzealous civilian policing. Legal analysts dissect the footage on primetime shows, calmly dismantling any conceivable defense for Malloy. Policy experts highlight each moment where he drifted farther from training, procedure, and basic constitutional principles that every rookie learns in week 1. Specialists in police tactics point out multiple policy violations and missed opportunities to de-escalate. Use of force experts underline how Malloy's aggressive posture against a non-threatening compliant subject broke departmental guidelines. Civil rights lawyers walk viewers through potential federal claims, civil suits under Section 1983, plus possible hate crime enhancements given racial motive evidence. Constitutional scholars explain how Malloy stomped on 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendment protections, stacking up possible grounds for federal intervention. Every layer of this stop, one expert testifies at a hearing, runs counter to constitutional protections that courts have reinforced for decades. It is a near-perfect example of what not to do. Malloy's mandatory psychological review uncovers a stew of resentment and bias simmering just below the surface. The department psychologist finds deep-seated racial prejudice inflamed by financial stress, divorce battles, child support, and festering anger at the wealth he sees around him but never reaches. All of it detonated during the Ellison stop. His personal struggles don't excuse his actions, the psychologist writes, but they help explain how unchecked bias, economic frustration, and feelings of professional inadequacy combined into the volatile behavior we witnessed. Proper oversight and intervention could have prevented this entire disaster. The Community Impact Report shows the fallout stretches far beyond one man's rights. Arlington residents now openly question whether they can trust officers' judgment at all. Shop owners worry that the department's tarnished reputation will scare off customers and employees. Military families, once comforted by proximity to the Pentagon, wonder if uniformed service makes them targets rather than neighbors. Years of relationship building have been scorched. This event ripped open wounds we thought were healing. Community liaisons testify during public forums. They warn that trust between police and residents, especially service members and minority communities, will require a complete rebuilding effort. Inside the department, officer statements expose a deeper cultural rot that allowed Malloy's prejudice to flourish unchecked. Colleagues describe his regular racist jokes during roll call, his open disdain for rich Arlington residents, and his laser focus on black and brown drivers in nice cars. We heard Malloy make racist cracks in briefings and out on patrol. One veteran officer admits, off the record, "We shrugged it off as talk. We never imagined it would escalate into something this catastrophic," he adds. The threat of a full federal probe hangs over everything Brooks does. The FBI Civil Rights Division shadows the case, reviewing her team's work and quietly weighing whether to launch their own independent investigation into department-wide civil rights violations. Justice Department lawyers analyze the growing mountain of evidence for potential federal criminal charges, not just against Malloy, but also supervisors who ignored repeated warning signs. Brooks warns command staff, if their reforms look cosmetic or half-hearted, the feds could impose oversight or a consent decree that strips local control from Arlington PD. The evidence file grows massive and inescapable. Dozens of video feeds, synced down to the second, leave no room for creative interpretation. Civilian statements from across age, race, and class lines echo the same story. Military clearance checks make it impossible to question Marcus's identity or heroism. Expert opinions converge on constitutional violations. Long-term pattern analysis shows misconduct that should have triggered internal alarms far earlier. This isn't just one officer having a bad day. Brooks writes in her preliminary report, it's a total breakdown of professional standards where individual bias intersected with systemic negligence to create a disaster that severely damaged public trust. The conference room goes quiet when Internal Affairs Captain Naomi Brooks finally presents her completed findings. 3 brutal weeks of interviews, late-night video review, and coordination with federal partners have produced a thick report that will ripple through policing manuals across the country. Chief Angela Ruiz studies it with a heavy expression. After an exhaustive probe, including 47 interviews, 16 hours of synchronized video, and multiple federal consultations, Brooks begins. This department finds Officer Kevin Malloy responsible for gross misconduct, civil rights violations, and criminal acts warranting immediate dismissal and referral to federal prosecutors. The list of charges sounds like a nightmare indictment read aloud in court. Racial profiling, false arrest, mishandling and destruction of classified material, deprivation of rights under color of law, failure to follow core departmental procedures, conduct dishonoring the badge. Each allegation is backed by timestamps, documents, and footage that leave essentially no path for a credible defense strategy. Malloy stares straight ahead, hollow-eyed. Effective immediately, Officer Malloy is fired for cause, Rice announces. His pension is revoked, his benefits canceled, and this case is formally referred for federal prosecution under civil rights statutes. His attorney scribbles notes at frantic speed while Malloy's life collapses in slow motion. Potential prison time, financial ruin, zero future in policing. Federal charges could land him behind bars for up to a decade, wipe out his savings, and make him toxic to any future public safety employer. Ruiz rolls out department-wide reforms simultaneously, the most sweeping in Arlington history. Bias training becomes monthly and mandatory, not an annual box check. Supervisors must actively monitor high-risk stops. New policies require command staff to review body cam footage from every traffic stop involving luxury vehicles or escalated detentions. Early warning systems get a full-tech overhaul, adding automatic alerts when complaints cluster around a single officer. We are instituting zero tolerance for profiling, Ruiz tells the press. Bias equals investigation, period. The Civilian Oversight Board receives more power than ever. Subpoena authority, independent fact-finding, and direct reporting lines to the City Council. Community members will track complaint trends, scrutinize use of force cases, and ensure the new systems don't just look good on paper. Inside the department, promotions reflect who actually upheld the badge that day. Officer Lisa Nguyen is elevated to training supervisor, recognized for her calm documentation and instincts when everyone else was swept up in Malloy's delusion. Her new mission? Build robust training modules on recognizing military credentials, handling luxury vehicle stops without bias, and preserving evidence properly, especially when national security documents might be involved. Nguyen's thorough documentation may be the reason this department didn't end up under immediate federal control, Ruiz acknowledges. We're honoring that by giving her the authority to help reshape how we police. Legal repercussions for Malloy stretch well beyond losing his badge. Colonel Ellison files a sweeping civil rights lawsuit seeking damages and reforms. The suit names Malloy personally and the department itself for systemic failures. This will bankrupt Malloy and cost the city millions, the city attorney warns in closed session. His behavior triggered not just an individual claim, but also a consent decree-style agreement, locking in years of court-monitored changes. Taxpayers inherit the bill for one man's bias. Congress doesn't stay on the sidelines. The Senate Intelligence Committee schedules hearings focused on local police obstructing military operations and national security witnesses. A new bill would create federal safeguards for service members who encounter hostile or prejudiced civilian officers. When local cops can derail congressional testimony, says Committee Chair Senator Harrington, we have a national issue. The Pentagon introduces rapid response protocols for detained service members, establishing direct hotlines between base commanders and local police. Anytime a uniformed or cleared military member is held, notifications fire automatically. Advocacy groups cautiously cheer. Veterans of foreign wars, American Legion, and modern vets groups unite to push for even broader protections. What happened to Colonel Ellison is an insult to everyone who raised their right hand, declares the VFW's national commander. Seeing accountability this strong sends a signal that service deserves respect, not suspicion. International media frames the saga as a test case for America's racial reckoning, asking how a war hero became a suspect at home. The story goes viral worldwide, sparking debates about policing and race in democratic societies. Meanwhile, Malloy's private life implodes. His ex-wife wins full custody, arguing that his blatant racism makes him unfit to model values for their kids. Businesses quietly refuse him service. Neighbors circulate petitions urging him to move away. He's effectively unemployable in any law enforcement role, his lawyer bluntly tells potential hiring agencies. He brings liability you don't want. The federal criminal case moves fast, powered by video, timestamps, and witness list that read like a prosecutor's dream exhibit. Malloy faces hate crime counts, civil rights violations, obstruction, and falsifying official reports. U.S. attorneys stand before microphones and say, "This prosecution reflects our obligation to hold law enforcement to constitutional standards." The badge is not a shield from accountability. As the legal process grinds forward, the community turns toward slow, deliberate healing, transparent town halls, listening sessions, and standing-room-only police community forums. Monthly meetings bring skeptical residents and wary officers into the same room, sharing fears, frustrations, and specific complaints. Change is tracked openly, with data dashboards and public reporting. Arlington's revamped policies for luxury car stops in wealthy neighborhoods draw national attention, becoming templates for other suburbs facing similar accusations of economic and racial profiling. Training packets born from the Ellison case spread through police academies via grants and professional networks. Reform advocates point to Arlington as proof that meaningful accountability, while painful, can yield real change. The city's settlement with Marcus includes substantial compensation plus a court-enforced consent decree locking in reforms with federal oversight for years. The agreement requires detailed annual reports on bias complaints, traffic stop demographics, and use of force incidents. Colonel Ellison returns to his desk at the Pentagon, continuing his duty while unintentionally becoming a national symbol of calm under fire. His rescheduled testimony on counterterrorism policy goes forward, widely praised as steady and insightful despite recent trauma. Military and civilian leaders alike commend his discipline. Colonel Ellison's composure in the face of injustice mirrors the courage that earned him his medals. General Whitaker says publicly, "Reform ripples outward as departments across the country examine their own practices through the lens of what happened in Arlington, determined not to repeat it." Federal guidance documents reference the Ellison incident repeatedly, urging agencies to build early warning systems and robust accountability structures. Police academies adopt it as a major case study in bias, power misuse, and corrective reform. Half a year later, the stats in Arlington tell a story of measurable progress rather than empty promises. Complaints alleging racial profiling dropped by 2/3. Surveys show more residents expressing cautious confidence in local officers. Service members stationed nearby report feeling more secure during off-base encounters. Analysts note that numbers, not speeches, are convincing people that change is more than prayer. Arlington becomes a showcase for reform after catastrophe. The final twist sharpens as Malloy approaches federal sentencing. The man who once swaggered around, convinced a black man in a luxury car had to be a criminal, is now defined in court filings as the criminal himself. Ellison, the target of his suspicion, stands as everything Malloy claimed to defend. The G-Wagon that inspired Malloy's resentment was bought with paychecks soaked in risk. Earned while Ellison protected freedoms, Malloy abused. Justice doesn't arrive in some cinematic revenge scene, but through painstaking system changes that outlive headlines, procedures ensuring that what happened that afternoon can't be easily repeated in Arlington or beyond. The cost of prejudice proves staggering. A ruined career, shattered family, millions in payouts, and scars on a department's name. Yet Ellison's steady dignity under pressure sparks reforms that safeguard countless others. Half a year after that Tuesday, the transformation feels almost unreal to people who watched it unfold in real time. The same coffee shop where Ellison was humiliated now displays a small plaque honoring veterans, paid for by locals who saw what happened and refused to forget. The exact parking space where his G-Wagon was ringed by cruisers has become an unofficial marker of change, a reminder that bias got called out and corrected. Back at the Pentagon, Ellison's work continues. His Hill testimony helped shape new counterterrorism laws, despite Malloy's attempt to derail him. Although the memory of that public humiliation still stings, he carries on with the same quiet discipline he showed downrange, now amplified by his unexpected role as a symbol of resilience. "I don't harbor personal hatred," he tells a packed community forum 6 months later. "My hope is that what happened to me prevents others from facing the same thing." His G-Wagon, repaired and gleaming, still catches stares on Arlington streets, but now the glances carry recognition and respect instead of suspicion and envy. The SUV that once triggered Malloy's fury now reads as what it always was, a visible marker of hard-earned success. Officer Nguyen's own journey reflects the department's new trajectory. As training supervisor, she has built bias awareness modules adopted by departments in multiple states, using her family's military roots to bridge gaps. "If I've learned anything," she says, "it's that silence gives injustice room to breathe. Documentation and speaking up can stop disasters before they explode." Her lessons drill into recruits how to handle high-end vehicles, respect military credentials, and de-escalate in neighborhoods where wealth and diversity intersect. The numbers back her approach. Reports show profiling complaints down sharply and approval ratings up. Arlington's layered reforms, automatic bias reviews, real-time body cam audits, a powerful oversight board prove that structural change can actually move the needle. Chief Ruiz, once worried only about damage control, now champions radical transparency as the price of legitimate authority in a democratic community. Accountability isn't about punishment alone, she tells cameras. It's about becoming better at the job we're sworn to do. The Civilian Oversight Board evolves into a respected institution, not just a token committee. Monthly public sessions, detailed use of force breakdowns, and community input on policy keep the spotlight on the department's progress and stumbles. Meanwhile, former Officer Malloy serves as a living warning sign. Convicted on federal civil rights charges, he receives 8 years in prison, his finances obliterated, and his future narrowed to cautionary footnote status. For younger officers reading his name in training manuals, he's no longer a colleague, but an example of what unchecked prejudice delivers. His children grow up under their mother's full custody, wrapped in the knowledge that their father's racism cost him everything: job, home, standing, even proximity to them. The same bitter envy of luxury that fueled his rage now stands as the catalyst for his downfall, reminding others that hate devours its source first. Beyond Arlington, military families begin to report more confidence that if something goes wrong with local cops, there are real channels for justice. Veterans groups highlight Ellison's case as proof that service members' rights aren't theoretical, they can be enforced. In Congress, a new law passes with rare bipartisan enthusiasm. Named the Colonel Ellison Act, it mandates immediate notification to military authorities when service members are detained by local police and forbids interference with national security responsibilities. Pentagon local police coordination protocols drafted in the aftermath rapidly diffuse potential misunderstandings elsewhere. Other departments borrow Arlington's playbook before their own crises strike. Awareness campaigns about luxury car profiling pop up in wealthy suburbs, coast to coast, challenging residents to see how race and class bias mingle at traffic stops. Workshops teach people how to document misconduct and support legitimate policing simultaneously. Social media hashtags like Honoraryros and Justice for Ellison mature into ongoing movements, not just momentary outrage. The tags now highlight success stories of respectful interactions between officers and veterans, amplifying examples of policing done right. In Arlington, businesses lean into the new era. Veteran-friendly hire signs appear in windows. Military discounts become more visible. The coffee shop hosts monthly service and community nights where uniforms and civilians share stories. Eleanor Price, the retired teacher who spoke up that day despite her fear, becomes a soft-spoken champion for citizen responsibility. Her testimony helped nail down Malloy's pattern of conduct. "I was terrified," she admits, "but staying quiet would have meant agreeing with what I knew was wrong. Ordinary people have to back justice, too." Jamal, once the nervous barista watching from behind an espresso machine, finishes his criminal justice degree and joins Arlington PD. He brings a neighbor's perspective into the squad room, symbolizing the department's promise to reflect the community it serves. His badge stands in direct contrast to the one Malloy disgraced. Nationwide, police academies fold the Ellison case into their core curriculum. Cadets study the footage, the statistics, and the reforms, then discuss how easily bias can distort perception. Researchers analyze Arlington's recovery as a model, writing papers that outline how thorough investigations and real consequences can actually rebuild trust after it shatters. Long-term data show sustained declines in bias complaints and upticks in citizen satisfaction surveys. The trend lines, not the press releases, convince skeptics that something real shifted. International commentators point to the Ellison story as proof that democratic systems can self-correct when communities demand more than platitudes and institutions are forced to respond. Still, the everyday difference is what matters most. Officers now step up to luxury vehicles with professional neutrality, not assumptions. Service members flashing military IDs see recognition instead of suspicion in officers' eyes. No one pretends the department is perfect, but the reflexive hostility of the past has been replaced with cautious partnership. Reform remains an ongoing process, not a finished product. But the skeleton of real change, accountability, transparency, shared power stands in place. Through it all, Colonel Ellison's response sets the tone. He refuses revenge, but he insists on truth and structural fixes, modeling a kind of strength that transforms anger into lasting safeguards. Progress requires courage from ordinary people, he tells a journalist. Not just those directly harmed, but everyone who sees something wrong and refuses to look away. His G-Wagon now symbolizes something broader than personal success, proof that service and sacrifice can still translate into opportunity despite those who would deny that reality. The SUV becomes shorthand for an American promise. Dignity earned, not granted. Prosperity achieved, not assumed stolen. Ellison's story reinforces that while justice can be delayed and twisted, it isn't always denied. When communities demand answers, institutions are forced into the uncomfortable work of reform rather than simply riding out the outrage cycle. Have you ever watched something clearly unfair and wondered if your voice could possibly matter? The saga of Colonel Marcus Ellison says yes. One man's composure, a crowd's phone cameras, a few witnesses refusing to back down, and investigators willing to follow facts turned a near tragedy into a turning point. If you believe in accountability, in the power of communities to reshape broken systems, share stories like this one. They remind us that justice isn't abstract. It's built day by people who show up. Subscribe to stay with us as we keep digging into how real change actually happens. At Black Stories, we don't sand down the rough edges or dilute the message for anyone's comfort. We bring you the raw truth straight, because reality doesn't need a filter. If this episode hit home, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and stick around for the next unfiltered story. Your voice, your perspective, your willingness to engage. That's how these conversations grow from isolated outrage into organized action. Every share, every comment, every subscription helps push stories like Colonel Ellison's into spaces where they can't be ignored, forcing the system to respond not just with words, but with measurable change. Thanks for watching Black Stories. If today's breakdown opened your eyes or echoed something you've lived, tap subscribe, join the community, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. We'll keep telling the stories others gloss over because the truth deserves to be heard, unfiltered. When service meets suspicion on your own street. If you are in your 60s or 70s, you have lived through wars, marches, and more than one promise that America was finally turning a corner on race. That is why Colonel Marcus Ellison's story hits so hard. Here is a man who spent more than 20 years in uniform, sleeping on cots, flying into hot zones, and pulling young soldiers out of ambushes overseas, only to be treated like a thief in his own neighborhood because he was a black man driving a shiny Mercedes. Many of you remember when a black person in the wrong neighborhood could expect trouble. You may have hoped those days were behind us. Yet in that quiet Arlington cul-de-sac, with coffee cups on sidewalk tables and cell phones in every hand, we saw how fast old prejudice can slip back on like a worn-out coat. The G-Wagon that Ellison paid for with combat pay and time away from his family became, in Officer Malloy's angry mind, proof of a crime all by itself. For older Americans who watched friends and relatives serve in Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, or Afghanistan, the insult is almost personal. It reminds us that even the highest medals on a man's chest cannot always protect him from someone who only sees skin color and price tags. The lesson is painful but clear. Justice is fragile, and service does not always guarantee respect at home. Ordinary witnesses can rewrite the story. Those of us with gray hair know another truth. Sometimes the bravest people are not the ones with rank, but the ones who quietly refuse to look away. In Marcus Ellison's case, it was not just generals and senators who turned the tide. It was a retired teacher with a golden retriever, a nervous young barista, a rookie officer with a soldier for a father, and a major sitting in a coffee shop who knew what real military bearing looks like. They did what many in your generation were taught to do in the 1960s and 1970s. They documented, they spoke up, and they refused to let the official version erase what their own eyes had seen. Smartphones became the new front row seats of history, the way old home movie cameras once were. Their videos, statements, and quiet courage exposed Malloy's lies and protected Ellison from becoming just another headline about resisting arrest. For seniors who marched, wrote letters, or simply refused to sit in the back of the bus, this is a familiar rhythm. Change begins when ordinary people say, "No, that is not what happened, and I will not pretend otherwise." The lesson here is hopeful. You do not have to be young, famous, or powerful to help bend the story toward truth. You just have to be willing to stand there, to press record, and to tell the truth when it is needed most. Real reform is slow, but it is possible. If you have seen more than 6 or 7 decades of American life, you know better than anyone that real change moves slowly, too slowly most days. You have watched blue ribbon commissions form after every crisis and then fade away when the cameras left. That is what makes the aftermath of the Ellison case different. Internal Affairs did not just shuffle papers. They dug into every video, every radio call, every complaint Malloy had collected over the years. Data showed a pattern of stopping drivers of color in nice cars. Complaints that once sat in dusty folders finally meant something. The chief did not just apologize. She fired Malloy, backed federal charges, and turned the whole department inside out. A young officer, Lisa Nguyen, was promoted to help retrain the force, and a civilian board with real teeth began watching the numbers month after month. Within half a year, complaints about profiling dropped, and trust, slow, cautious trust, started to return. For older Americans, this should sound familiar. It is like watching a body heal after surgery. Ugly at first, scarred, but slowly stronger if the doctors do their work and the patient follows through. The promise we still owe each other. For many people in their mid-60s and 70s, the question is simple. After all these years, was it worth it? Were the marches, the votes, the hard conversations around the kitchen table just drops in a bucket with a hole in it? The Ellison case does not give a perfect answer, but it gives an honest one. Yes, prejudice still lives. Yes, one bitter officer nearly turned a hero into a felon over nothing but envy and skin color. But because people had learned to film, to file complaints, to demand hearings, the system was forced to respond. The promise you fought for has not fully arrived, but it has more muscle than it once did. And that is partly because you never stopped believing it could. After hearing what happened to Colonel Ellison and seeing how neighbors, veterans, and ordinary folks helped turn a terrible injustice into real reform, I'd love to hear from you. In your own life, have you ever witnessed something clearly unfair and had to decide whether to speak up or stay silent? What did you do, and what do you wish you had done? Share your story in the comments, and let's learn from one another. And if this conversation matters to you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode.